So this question is 4 different questions slightly on the same, that are related. 4 different people wrote this question. Should we have different services at different schools? How would you equalize special education resources for children at different PAUSD schools? Should efforts be made to keep kids at schools they would attend if they did not have a disability? What are the benefits and difficulties of this approach? Why are inclusion kids moved to other schools instead of being in their neighborhoods? Melissa.
Okay, to me this is actually 2 categories of questions, so I'll try to answer both categories. The first category being, do we think we should have site-based services, basically? Do we think that sites should determine what the services are for special education? And I'm a big fan of the innovation that comes from site-based decision-making. However, I really believe that when we're talking about special ed, we need consistency. And this is what got us into trouble over the last years. So what I would like to see is I'd like to see a model that's standardized across our district for how we do special education services and how we make sure that accommodations and interventions are done. The other thing, though, around inclusion, whether we move students to different schools for inclusion, we need to be sensitive to this. If you have 4 kids and one of them needs to be in a special ed classroom or needs to be in an inclusion classroom, it could be incredibly difficult for you to go to another school for them. And it can be incredibly isolating for you to be at another school all alone. And anything we can do to tie you in where your family is and tie you into the community, we really, really should be doing. And I've talked to several people in this audience about how isolating it can be, and we can make a difference on that if we focus on it as what does a family feel like and how do we make sure a family's part of the community.
So, yes, right now I think we have classes at 7 of our 12 elementary schools, inclusion classrooms, so they need to, you need to travel if you're not at one of the schools that is. We actually, one thing we loved about Juana Briones is that it was an inclusion school, that my son would be in a classroom with kids of different abilities. That was a real value for me of being at this school. I think we absolutely need to keep the kids in the neighborhood school whenever possible. One of our values here in our district is strong neighborhood schools. We want to make sure that we're not asking kids and parents to drive all over town to get to a different program or a different school. We were talking about social isolation of students earlier. This is certainly contributing to social isolation of parents too when they have to leave their neighborhood school and go somewhere else. So I would also work towards making sure that we have consistent services at the different schools.
Actually, the district has made some movement in this regard since I've been on the board. There was a point at which every year, if there was room at one school, the special ed students would be moved to where there was an open classroom, and I see people nodding. And that was problematic because you might be at a different school a different year, and parents would get connected in one school and then would have to move to another. There has been wonderful growth in this area, sensitivity to the fact that you do want children and their parents to be part of a school community, because that's how you get your support for your children, is through your parents as well. So this has been of concern to the district to provide the best services for the kids academically, but at the same time understanding that that social connection that's needed in the classroom. So we've been moving toward that, and I think we've embraced it, and how we do it best, we're still moving there. So I'm glad to see the progress we've seen.
So I think we actually have inclusion classrooms at Barron Park and at Duveneck. And I was speaking with a kindergarten teacher at Duveneck about this, and she was telling me that she has a child in her classroom who is moving across town in order to be there, and she said, well, I see the benefits to this child as a kindergartner in being in a mainstream classroom, but the loss of the neighborhood and the community is a real loss for this child, and I think it's important that the fact that we have begun this program in 2 schools is the beginning and it's not the destination. And I do think, as I said before in my introductory remarks, that we have to recognize where site-based control gives us benefits in terms of innovation, as Melissa talked about, but also where it produces unequal services across the district. And when it does that, as it too often does, then we need to do something else. And we need to really insist that our organization provide equal services to kids no matter what neighborhood they live in or no matter what school they attend. So I'm a strong advocate for looking out for those opportunities and for taking them.